Welcome into the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, a podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from those who cover the NBA on a daily basis. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Welcome to the Pelicans Podcast. I am Joe Cardosi, joined by the assiduous Jim Eichenhofer. The grind never stops, my friend. We are now 2-1. A lot of people wanted to see the Warriors. A lot of home fans came out, wanted to see the Steph Curry show. Boy, they got a show.
Yes, they did, and you caught me off guard there for a second because I've heard assiduous, but I actually don't think I know the definition of that. So if you can enlighten me,
yes,
that would be great. Hopefully, it's not an insult.
Boy, did the Golden State Warriors give us some adversity. We seem to be hanging in there for a bit, but just too much Steph Curry. 42 points in 30 minutes.
The way he started the game out was a bad sign for the Pelicans. I just had a bad feeling overall the way that first quarter went, even though I think it was only a 2-point game at the end of that. But the way he was shooting, I mean, he just makes it look so easy, which is hard to believe that you can have a 42-point game and just almost all on jump shots, all on deep threes. He had Pelicans defenders jumping all over the place to try to contest his shots. So, yeah, unfortunately, that was a rough night for the Pelicans, and after the first two games, it was just totally different than the way that they looked in the first couple.
Yeah, absolutely, and the Warriors will do that to plenty of teams throughout this season. I'm trying not to get too down on one loss.
Sure.
We sort of understand who they are. I'm glad that the 8-year-olds in Warriors jerseys got to enjoy a show, or the 42-year-olds who act like 8-year-olds wearing Warrior jerseys that are from here. But, man, CP3 in the second unit is just almost unfair. I wasn't sure how that experiment would go. I wasn't honestly sure how much CP3 may have left in the tank. It's not like he's, been just a part-timer on every team he's been on. So, So for him to fill this role, it's almost unfair. There's basically no drop-off.
Yeah, I think we talked about this, I think, on Monday's show about what his job description is now. Yeah. And it seems like he's going to be a perfect fit as far as he's not going to need to score a bunch of points. He's going to be kind of the table setter, the guy that's going to make sure that they're organized. They get into their offensive sets, and he also can still make some jumpers, some mid-range shots here and there. So it was a really good performance by him, and I'm sure they're very inspired and encouraged by the fact that it looks like their second unit might be a lot better this year, largely because of he was added to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine how it would be a detriment. At least it would be a steady hand. I just didn't expect him to be that effective that early on, I suppose. But there's a quick turnaround, as in tonight the Pelicans will be facing the Oklahoma City Thunder. Do not worry. There's a quick turnaround. You don't get to be sad long. There is Jim interviews. There is Jim sound. We've got plenty of stuff that he has brought. He has brought us goodies.
Yeah, like the Pelicans, they're off to a good start. They're 3-1 so far. Their only loss was, just like the Pelicans, was also to a kind of a premier team in the West. Yeah. They got blown out by Denver on Sunday. Pelicans lost by a good margin to Golden State. So very similar way that the season has started for them. Couple of quick Thunder notes. They have two Jalen Williams. The one that is the center from Arkansas that I think some people regionally are familiar with, he's out tonight because of injury.
I'll take it.
My guy, Kenrich Williams, is also out because of injury. Always like to see him do well. So, but unfortunately for him, he's sidelined. And on the Pelican side, Brandon Ingram is questionable as we record this with the right knee soreness that kept him out of the game Monday. So we'll have to monitor that, and I'm guessing we'll find out maybe like a little bit before tip-off tonight whether he's playing. But those are a few kind of notable names that with injury concerns right now.
Do you expect the Pelicans to be a little wounded by that loss? I mean, they got pantsed a little bit in that game.
I think over the last couple of days, I'm sure that they've watched film, and one of the biggest things that stood out is the rebounding. Rebounding has been a big problem in the last two games. Yeah. We didn't really dwell on it too much in the Knicks game because they won handily.
Right, and it's one game.
But after you get pounded, it was 64-39 Golden State rebounding in the game Monday, and you lose by that margin. It definitely perks up your interest and wakes you up and says this is something that needs to be addressed. So I think that's a big thing. One thing that's kind of interesting, and granted, a week into the season, the team stats, it's kind of dicey of whether you want to read into it or not, but OKC is actually 30th in offensive rebounding. So, I mean, if there's a team where, at least on paper, where you say we need to do better in that category and not allow the other team to get second chances, it's the Thunder.
Yeah.
Both the Pelicans and the Thunder have been big on fast break so far, both in the top half of the league. Pelicans are 6th in fast break points per game. So, those are, like, team-wise, those are a couple things to watch.
Yeah.
Matchup-wise, there's a bunch of interesting matchups.
I was about to say, you've got the info, man, the Gymfo.
Yeah, I have on my FanDuel keys to the game, my matchup to watch. I mean, there was a bunch of them I could pick from, but I went with Jonas Valanciunas versus Chet Holmgren at center. Definitely two totally different body types,
Right.
Two totally different ends of the spectrum in terms of experience. Jonas is in his 12th year. Chet Holmgren has played 4 games in the NBA.
Vastly different beards as well.
Ooh, I didn't think about that part. That should have been in the keys to the game,
Right.
But I neglected to include it. So
It's all right. That's why I'm here.
That's a good point. But yeah, I mean, and then you have the guard situation where you have, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah.
Josh Giddey is really good player for them, really good passer. And then on the Pelicans side, you have CJ McCollum, Herb Jones, and then Jordan Hawkins started in the game Monday. And obviously, I think his role tonight will swing a lot based on Ingram's status. So we'll have to stay tuned and see what happens with that.
And I know people are still maybe a little trepidatious to see Jordan Hawkins out there because he's new. He has been a little streaky. But when you're going to go up against a team where you need to space the floor, but especially if you don't have BI, you got to hope he's having an on night. Because, again, the Oklahoma City Thunder, a lot of people may forget about them other than the Chet Holmgren fans, I guess, but they're not to be overlooked. I feel like they always play us tough. I don't know if it's just a division rivalry thing, but it just seems like no matter what the construction of an OKC team is, they always give us fits.
The games in Oklahoma City have been so bizarre and strange over the last couple of years and had, like, just confounding endings. You had the Devontae Graham 70-foot bank shot at the buzzer to beat them in a game that otherwise would have gone to overtime. There's been a couple other games that have come down to the wire. So I'm not sure what it is about the games in that arena, but they've been pretty close. But like you said, though, they've been a tough matchup, and I don't want to bring this up, but I guess I have to. The play-in game was the thing that I mean, you had a couple guys for OKC have the best offensive games of their career or close to them.
Yeah.
Between Josh Giddey had 31, Lou Dort was making a bunch of threes in that game, and I think he had high 20s. So I mean, they had a couple guys that really stepped up big in that game, and they ended the Pelican season. So yeah, it's definitely not a fun matchup. It's definitely a challenge.
Jim, I want to get to some of this sound you've got, man, because you are always a busy bee. I know you have been out and about. And just tell us what you got for us today, man.
Yes, and by the way, too, before we get into this, I wrote this down. I wanted to mention to you when you talked about the 8-year-olds in the Warriors jerseys and the Curry jerseys at the game. I tweeted this morning very early, so people might have missed it. It was 8 a.m., which is that's very early for me.
I'll say usually the Eichenhofer heads are up at 6 a.m. watching the feed, waiting for you. But who knows?
But I tweeted that there was a kid in the post-game TV show with not Aaron Hardigan, with Madison Hawk and David Wesley. They were doing their post-game wrap-up, and there was a guy, older gentleman. Well, I shouldn't say older. He was probably like in his 30s or 40s.
Gross, old. I'm 40-something.
He was holding up a Warriors sign right behind them. This kid, he looked like maybe he was, I would say, maybe in his tweens, maybe like an 11, 10-year-old, 12-year-old kid. He jumps in front of the guy, holds up a Pelicans shirt, and obscures this Warriors fan for a solid 10 seconds.
Tiny heroes.
Give that kid credit, man.
Absolutely.
You did a darn good job. But anyways, I digress. In the clip that we're going to hear, and I guess I shouldn't call it a clip. We should call it a full-fledged 10-minute interview. Yes, a gym interview. I talked to Matt Ryan, the sharpshooting Matt Ryan.
Yes.
Not the PR Matt Ryan,
Absolutely.
Not the former Atlanta Falcons despised quarterback. But
yes,
I was actually, it was fun talking to him.
Yeah, it seems like you schooled him on a lot.
I did help him out, kind of understand the culture a little bit, and more specifically understand the roots of the Matt Ryan despised in New Orleans story. As you'll hear in the interview, he definitely didn't have a good feel for that still. I mean,
why are people giving me the thumbs down when I tell them my name? I don't get it.
Yeah, people look at you cross-eyed when you say my name's Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
But it was funny too. He kind of explains how he chose number 37. That was one of the first things I thought when I saw that his first game against Memphis. I was like,
Right.
So where do you come up with 37 from? That's just not a number you see on the basketball court. But as he says, he had the misfortune of his favorite number is 32, but everywhere he's gone, basically, there's been a 32. There was Kevin McHale in Boston, Magic Johnson in the Lakers retired. Karl Anthony Towns has 32 in Minnesota currently, and Mr. E.J. Liddell has 32 here. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And also just his background is so interesting. He came out of college right when COVID hit, or right after COVID, or no, right before COVID hit. And
What a young whippersnapper.
He did some DoorDash driving, and he did a shift at a cemetery. So, I mean, I don't know how many NBA players have that background. That might be a Venn diagram that only includes Matt Ryan, I would think. But
And me, maybe. I haven't done DoorDash, but I was a gravedigger. That was my first job back in the day when I was about 16 or so.
Yeah.
So, I never saw Matt Ryan out there, but I guess we were in different places, different ages.
Right.
But, good to know he's part of the fraternity. We've all got secret tattoos. It's real cool. But yeah, that's
Didn't
a hard
realize
living.
that.
No, it's a hard living. I'm glad he was able to make it through and get on the other side of it. But this is a great gym interview, a one-on-one with Matt Ryan. Check this out. So many fun moments in this one.
With Matt Ryan for the Pelicans podcast. Matt, first I wanted to ask you, obviously you signed only a couple days before the regular season here. When you made the decision to come here, I mean, what went into that? Was part of it, the role that you thought you might have and just the kind of the surrounding players? It seems like this is a good place for a shooter to be.
Well, to be honest with you, I had no say in it. I was waived from Minnesota last Friday, and when you get waived, you're on a kind of like a 48-hour wire claim thing. So anybody around the league could claim you on the contract that you're already on. And so it was Friday. I think later in the day, Saturday, I had an idea of a few teams that were involved and, trying to get my contract. So, I was just super happy that it was here. I knew that there was going to be an opportunity right away to come in and potentially make an impact. And, I found out Sunday that I was coming here, and then I flew in Monday morning, and then Wednesday night playing, home opener and, playing 15 minutes, which was great. It's been a blessing. Not everybody kind of falls into an opportunity like this, so I'm going to keep trying to make the most of it.
You've mentioned this already in a couple interviews you've done, but what's the first, week plus been like for you? It seems like this is we've talked about in the past how it seems like a bunch of good dudes. Like, what's it been like for you as off the court?
100%. The coaching staff has been unbelievable, embracing me, treating me like I've been here longer than I have. But I think that they have a feel for who I am. I'm not a young kid. I'm 26 years old. I've been playing basketball for 20 years now. So I come in every day and put my best foot forward, work hard, pay attention. Follow the game plans. So when you do that, I think it kind of gives the coaches a little bit more trust in you. Even though I've only been here, I mean, by the time the first game happened, I was only here for less than 48 hours. But it was a great sign that coach trusted me and played me even more last game, even when I was missing shots. But I'm just working my ass off out there and just trying to build.
A few background questions. I think a lot of people are curious, where did number 37 come from? That's not a very traditional common basketball number.
No, for sure it's not. My whole life I wore 32, but in the summer of 2021, I signed with Cleveland for the summer league, and I didn't get to pick the jersey number. 37 was given to me, and I played well, and I signed my first contract was with Denver actually, and I just went with 37, and I ended up signing a two-way with Boston. Obviously couldn't get 32 in Boston.
Kevin McHale.
Yep, and then I went to the Lakers, can't get 32 there.
Magic, yep.
And then I went to Minnesota, can't get 32 there. Karl Towns is wearing
yep.
that. Mm-hmm. Came here, EJ has it. So I think I'm almost at that tipping point where I'm going to give up on 32 and just go with 37 probably for the rest of my career.
Nice. People have joked a lot about how there's actually a PR guy here that's named Matt Ryan with the same name as you. There's also a kind of infamous quarterback in these parts from the Falcons, retired quarterback, Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
Have you?
I don't think he's retired.
No, he's
retired?
a broadcaster now.
Oh, he's done?
Yeah, he's
done.
officially
retired.
Yeah, he's retired.
Okay, good for him.
I mean,
hell of a career.
You never know with NFL quarterbacks. They can always come back.
I know. I see rumors that some teams might be interested in him.
I haven't heard that, but I mean, I'm sure that's possible.
Yeah.
A lot of guys can play if they're 42 and the teams I remember hearing
hockey quarterbacks who played at 45
right.
now.
Philip
a la
Rivers
Tom Brady,
might come back someday.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you, I mean, you haven't been there this long, but have you gotten a sense from people as far as has people joked with you about the other Matt Ryan? About,
some friends and family have sent me a couple tweets here and there, but to be honest with you, and all of the Pelicans fans, I have no clue the history of Matt Ryan in New Orleans. I truly have no idea. But I guess I'll learn when people keep telling me. Can you did they just play each other a lot?
Well, yeah, the Falcons and the Saints are a huge rivalry.
Oh, okay.
And so the a historic one, and the Saints had a lot of huge wins against the Falcons, and I think any quarterback for Atlanta will be disliked here. So that's basically what it is. If you hear people say to you,
and Matt
I know
was
your
in
name's
Atlanta
Matt
for
Ryan,
a long time.
but I like you anyways. That's probably what they will mean.
For sure.
I think our official Twitter account put out a tweet during the Memphis game where you had a steal, and they said something like Matt Ryan creating turnovers.
Yeah, I
again,
saw that.
And that was what they meant. They meant
it's like a play on that. Yeah.
Referencing Matt Ryan, the quarterback, throwing an
I got you.
interception against the.
Yeah, so if that's a big rivalry, I'm sure there's a lot of hate towards Matt because he was in Atlanta for a long time.
Right.
So him and Drew Brees must have had some good battles down here. Huh?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Couple more quick kind of background questions. There's so many interesting anecdotes from articles that I've seen that are written about you. For example, I'm sure you've been asked about the DoorDash experience. What was that like, and how did that come about? Basically?
It was just during COVID. After my 5th year of college, it was March 2020 when COVID hit, and it affected so many people in different ways. But for me specifically, put a hold on the start of my career. I wasn't a highly touted prospect after my 5th year. I was kind of looking forward to getting some workouts in person and being able to show what I could do in person, but those never happened. And so from March 2020 all the way to January of 2021, so 10 months, all I was doing was training. I was in the best shape of my life, but I was home in New York, not playing on a team.
Yeah.
And I just got bored. I was just like, man, can I make some money? So I had a car. I did DoorDash. I haven't really told anybody this, but I really only did DoorDash for less than a month. It wasn't something I was doing for a long time.
Right.
I did it for less than a month. What I did for a little bit longer, 2 or 3 months, was actually working at a cemetery. And my grandparents, for a very long time, have had a stoning business where they do headstones for cemeteries. And so, through the help of my grandfather, was able to just get a quick job at a cemetery, kind of just doing landscaping and helping out wherever they needed me. And that was for a few months. And that was into the summer of 2021. And then I locked in on my training. I knew that, I was about to go play. And then eventually went to Cleveland for Summer League and then signed at Exhibit 10 with Denver.
I actually had that on my list to ask you about the graveyard shift that you worked on because,
the shift was 7 a.m. to 3:30.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't an overnight thing.
Overnight, right.
It was me waking up at 5:30 a.m., leaving my house at, 6:15, getting to the cemetery at 6:45, clocking in, swiping the thing.
Time card.
Mm-hmm. And when I started, it was 15 degrees out. I was wearing layers on layers.
Yeah.
Working in the snow, and then it got into the spring, got warmer, started working on my tan out there. But it was long days, and then 3:30 would hit, you'd punch out. I had my gym bag, go straight to the gym for a few hours, eat dinner, repeat.
Yeah. Last thing, it's good to have another upstate New Yorker, by the way. I'm from Syracuse area.
Well, I'm not upstate. You're upstate. I'm Westchester. I'm right outside the city. But if you're in the city, you think I'm upstate too.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
I know how that goes.
Everyone has a different definition of upstate. Some people think anything that's not New York City is upstate. Some people think that you have to be like west of Albany, maybe.
Listen, I am downstate. I have trophies from when I was little with downstate New York champions on them. I am downstate.
Well, it's too bad you've distanced yourself from me, but that's okay. At least you're still a New Yorker. I saw that you played AAU basketball with Donovan Mitchell too. That was something that was part of your background. How did you? So you're downstate New York guy.
Yeah.
And you end up at Notre Dame and that kind of thing. How did like the beginning of your college career start as far as your recruitment and stuff like that?
I mean, I was highly recruited. I played AAU with Donovan when I was in middle school. Mm-hmm. Then I went to high school. My high school teammate was Ty Jerome, who's now playing with Donovan in Cleveland.
Yeah.
He was my point guard in high school. But, ever since the end of my freshman year, I was highly recruited. I was considering Notre Dame, Duke, North Carolina. I was getting recruited by Kentucky, Stanford, Michigan. I mean, it was crazy. It was all the high majors. And I had an injury my junior year of high school, and Notre Dame kind of continued to recruit me the hardest. And I committed to them at the end of my junior year to just lock in my spot. I didn't want to lose an opportunity to go there. I love Notre Dame, the tradition and the environment over there. So I committed to Notre Dame. It didn't work out. Transferred to Vanderbilt, had to sit out. Got to play my senior year. We had a terrible year. Coach Bryce Drew gets fired. So I graduated from Vanderbilt. I did a grad transfer year at Chattanooga, and then COVID hit, and here we are.
You mentioned a lot of like top academic schools. Were you always was that big for you always?
For sure.
School.
For sure, absolutely. I went to a good academic high school. My mom was a high school math teacher for 35 years. The MBA was never a guarantee, so I wanted to make sure I had a good degree. Even when I was transferring from Notre Dame, I was really only considering like Vanderbilt, Georgetown, and I think maybe Cal Berkeley was up there, but it was really like Vanderbilt and Georgetown, and ended up choosing Vanderbilt.
Great stuff there from Matt Ryan, learning as everyone does from Mr. Jim Eichenhofer. So weird to hear him talk about being like a savvy vet when he's so young. I don't know if you know this about me, Jim, but my hip dissolved this morning. I'm so old. Every day I wake up, I'm afraid I quantum leaped into a corpse. But good for him, feeling young, feeling vital. And it seems like he's going to bring an extra little dynamic to this team that not a lot of Pelicans fans were expecting when they first saw it.
Yes, and he was a little combative. I don't know what the word is for when I brought up the part about him being an upstate New Yorker.
What's up with that?
He was, he blocked that away like, Jonas Valanciunas in the paint.
Yeah, he acts like you came from like where the hills have eyes came from or something. Like you're not a hillbilly. Like you didn't come in with like a 2 sticks and try to interview him with one of them. Like you're a learned, well-rounded man.
I would like to consider myself an educated person, but you know what?
But you are wearing a shirt, which makes you 007 in upstate New York, I guess. I don't know. You're basically James Bond.
Oh, boy. No, it is interesting. I'm sure not many people know this outside of the Northeast or specifically New York State, but there is kind of a funny dynamic between people from New York City and the rest of the state.
Yeah.
I don't know if we necessarily see eye to eye too often.
People in New York City act like they're surrounded by vast wilderness, even though there are like 200,000 people in the town next to it, whatever.
Right, yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah, so it's funny when I was in college, I went to college about an hour from where I grew up, which is kind of in the Syracuse area to not get too complicated for people that don't know New York geography, but it's very upstate where I went to college, and I went to school with a lot of New York City people. And I remember one guy specifically called me a hick because he was making fun of my accent. And I was like, he was like,
you don't have an accent.
Right.
Imagine me coming from Tarrant, Alabama. If they'd have heard me, they'd have just called the cops or something. I feel like that's incredible.
And what was even funnier about him calling me a hick is he called me in his New York City accent. So he was like, I knew you was from around here when I heard you talking with a hick accent.
Yeah, you talk funny. Look, you're okay.
We're gonna have to work this out between Matt Ryan and I, though. I think we'll come to agreement here. We'll get past the fact that
show up in a suit with a martini next time. Maybe I'll dazzle.
Yeah, I think we'll get beyond this. The fact that he kind of looks down on me, but that's okay. That's okay. it won't bother me too much.
It's only a matter of time before he gets indoctrinated into the system and he realizes Jim Eichenhofer is the centerpiece of this organization. He's going to come around. Jim,
Yes.
it is Wednesday, which can mean only one thing: Western Conference Wednesday. And boy, we've got a lot to look at. The games tonight, the Western Conference in general. Put it together for us, my friend.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of start by talking about kind of a big picture thing. We talked about throughout the offseason that the Western Conference is going to be very deep, and it's not just us. It was everyone saying that 1 through 15, it's going to be a tall order on a nightly basis. And it might still be that, but I think one of the things that's been interesting takeaway from the first week of the season is there's 4 teams that finished 12th through 15th last year. Dallas finished 11th. It was a shocker that they didn't even make the play-in tournament with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. The group of 4 beyond them includes Utah, San Antonio, Portland, and Houston. That group, I think everyone thought that all of those teams would be at least a little bit more competitive, some more than others.
Right.
Those 4 are 4-11 so far. So, I mean, take it with a grain of salt.
Yes.
We've seen, I think one of the biggest lessons from last season was that you can't go too far into whatever happens in the first month of the season.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at the Pelicans and also looking at teams like the Lakers that started off terribly and then ended up in the Western Conference Finals.
Right.
But I do think that there's some thinking based on the results so far that maybe some of those teams are going to struggle throughout the season, whether it's
Fingers
because
crossed.
of right, exactly. That's what we hope for.
Yeah.
Based on youth or just based on, whatever additions they made aren't going to be enough to jump them from the bottom part of the West.
Well, the
up
margin
higher.
of error in terms of the West is so hard to allow for the growing pains of a developing team right now.
Right.
So it's
Good-
hard to
very
be,
good point.
getting into that groove because there's almost no slate you look at where you're like, okay, we can find ourselves here. Okay, we can get our offense going here. It's really hard to pick your spots.
And I think very specific to that point, you could actually improve a lot. Just to take Houston, for example, they could be a lot better on paper this year. They could be a lot better team, but just because you have more talent doesn't mean that you're going to win more games because the competition is so good that top
arms
11
race.
is just really difficult and formidable. So just something that I kind of have my eyes on.
Yep.
Of that 4 teams that I listed, the Spurs are 2-2. So they've been pretty. That's pretty good. It was a miracle that they won at Phoenix last night. So they had a crazy comeback in the fourth quarter. Otherwise, they would have been 1-3. But those other teams that I listed, though, are a lot of it is you look at their schedule and it's like, yeah, they might be 1-3 or 0-3, but they've played all good teams. So
it's also dangerous for Pelicans fans who may be schedule watching and looking at wins and losses of teams coming in if they're a little bit passive in their fandom and they don't know, okay, maybe that team's maybe they're coming in here, we're going to stomp them.
Right.
It's not that easy.
You need to bring it every night.
Yes,
as a fan.
You cannot relax as a fan. You cannot relax as the Pelicans. Doesn't matter how much a team may have been beaten by the night before. You never know if they're going to want to have a little something extra for you coming off a loss. And again, this Western Conference is just such a bear. We're going to be talking about it all season long because, of course, we're going to be trying to navigate our way through that Western Conference. But I feel like if we can make it through, at least make it into the tournament, that's going to go a long way, as stacked as this division is, in terms of Pelicans fans feeling good about this roster moving forward, hopefully.
Yeah, and last week I talked about my team to watch on Western Conference Wednesday was Oklahoma City. I mean, part of why I picked them is because they finished very similarly to the Pelicans in the standings the year before.
Yeah.
They played each other in the play-in game. Don't want to bring that up again, but I just did. They actually, I think to me, they got off to a good start, and I think a lot of people expected that. Oklahoma City went 3-1 last week. They won at Chicago. They won at Cleveland, very good team. They beat Detroit in Oklahoma City on Monday. Their only loss was the blowout to Denver that I mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
So, but still, very good, encouraging start for them. I do think that they're going to be a team that potentially we're looking at in the standings constantly this year because the Pelicans are near them. Which brings me to my team to watch this week.
Yes.
Very similar kind of theme. My team to watch is the Timberwolves. They finished almost exactly with the same spot as the Pelicans last year.
Yeah.
They were the 8th seed. The Pelicans were the 9th seed. It came down to the last day of the season. So
Yeah.
again, we're talking about a team that could be neck and neck with New Orleans throughout the entire season. But beyond that, part of why I picked Minnesota for this week is their slate is very interesting. They play Denver in Minnesota tonight. Then they're home against Utah on Saturday, and then home against Boston on Monday. So you're talking about Denver, a team that won the championship last year.
That's a murderer's row.
Boston on Monday, a team that a lot of people think might be able to go to the finals this year after they were there 2 seasons ago. And then, coincidentally, or maybe not, next Wednesday they actually host the Pelicans in Minnesota. So very similar team. They're off to a 1-2 start. I think there's been some discouraging aspects of their beginning part of the season. They lost their opener to the Raptors. It's been very up and down so far. They beat Miami, but the Heat had a bunch of guys out, including Jimmy Butler, rested.
That's a good call.
So that's a team, I think when we come back in 7 days and it's another Western Conference Wednesday, I'll be really curious to see what their record is based on the schedule that they have coming up.
Big thanks to Mr. Jim Eichenhofer, as always. Great sound, great interview with Matt Ryan and the Jimfo that you need. Give him a follow on Twitter at Jim_Eichenhofer. And give us a listen on Friday. We will have much more for you. So until then, that is Mr. Jim Eichenhofer. I am Joe Cardosi. And until then, go Pels!
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, or you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.